continues to hit this week. We just got official confirmation that a Zelda live action movie is in the works, produced by none other than our bestie, Shigeru Miyamoto. Wow! Initial reaction.
You see the words, "This is Miyamoto," to start a tweet, and you know your life is about to change forever. Wow.
Oh man, that doesn't happen very often, as we know. And yes, when you see those three words, your heart sort of jumps into your stomach a little bit. And you're like, oh, hold on to your butts, people. Something big is happening.
Yeah, we had just been chewing on the Q2 financial results in the morning, come back in the afternoon for this bombshell tweet. I'll just read it. It's quite short. There's actually two tweets. "This is Miyamoto. I have been working on the live-action film of The Legend of Zelda for many years now, with Avi Arad-san, who has produced many mega-hit films. I have asked Avi-san to produce this film with me, and we have now officially started the development of the film with Nintendo itself heavily involved in the production. It will take time until its completion, but I hope you look forward to seeing it."
When he threads a tweet, people, you know it's big. What an unexpected bombshell of a news thing to happen today that there's no way in heck I could have predicted something like this, but I'm super happy to see it.
So in addition to the tweet, there's also a press release that has some additional details. So we have a director. The director's name is Wes Ball. We'll talk about him in a minute. It says that the film is going to be co-financed by Sony Pictures Entertainment and Nintendo, with more than 50% of the financing coming from Nintendo. And also, people have found out who the writer of the movie is going to be. His name's Connelly. We'll talk about all the people involved in a minute, but it's quite a substantial bit of information. Obviously, we don't have any visuals or anything, no actor's name, but as far as a starting point, I think there's a lot here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to just dig into today after the initial shock has worn off. Let's just jump into all the little details. First of all, let's talk about the money, because we always got to follow the money. It is, as you said, 50% financed by Nintendo. But what does that mean? We know that the Mario movie was also the same sort of financial structure. It was around 50-50 with Universal and Nintendo. So that seems to be like a business model that they're maybe using going forward for movies. Obviously, they made that back in spades for the Mario movie. So they're probably thinking that this is going to be a big hit, which it probably will be. So yeah, what does this mean? How much money is Nintendo going to have to foot to get this project going?
So it's more than 50% that Nintendo's putting up. And, the saying goes, money talks. So I think this gives them some degree of creative control over what this movie is. They're not going to be strong-armed by Sony Pictures here, because they can always say, it's like, hey, we're putting up the money for this thing. We got the moolah. So, if there is ever some sort of a creative dispute, I think that they get the final say here. It's notable. This is not Universal. They built this great relationship with Universal for the theme parks, for the Mario movie. This is a completely different group. So I do kind of wonder about that dynamic. I feel like in the end, they had a really good dynamic with Universal, where both sides were very collaborative. And we saw Chris Meledandri in all these Nintendo Directs giving his point of view. This is kind of a fresh relationship to start with. And it does seem to revolve around this Avi Arad character, who says in the tweet, he doesn't just make films. He doesn't make just hit films. These are mega hit films.
Mega hit films. Yeah, definitely a bit of a departure. I think that Nintendo probably saw Universal's sort of wheelhouse in animated movies. And so when they were doing live action, when they thought about maybe doing live action for Zelda, they wanted someone with that experience, which could explain why they went with Sony Pictures and why they're going with and being very vocal about who they're working with. In the case of Avi Arad. So how much do you know about Avi Arad? Because I got to tell you, I know quite little about Avi Arad.
So I do know the name because he was very instrumental in kind of pre MCU Marvel movies. So he was kind of the producer of note all the way up to like Iron Man, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then from then on, it kind of, went in another direction. But he was also involved in the Marvel movies that Sony had continued to put out. So those Spider-Man movies that had like
Yep.
Andrew Garfield in them, the
Mhm.
recent Venom movies, the Uncharted movie I saw that he was involved with. So that's a video game property. So he's got some experience there.
Right.
I got to say, that's not the cream of the crop as far as Marvel movies go.
Right.
So that is an interesting point of, these are mega hits, but they're not always critically acclaimed.
Right.
But he does kind of have this experience of translating this pop culture phenomenon from one medium to another. So I can kind of
Right.
see the general concept of what they were going for there.
Right. Right. I feel like he would be a very collaborative partner as well. I think that's something to keep in mind with, we've both worked at Nintendo collectively for over 30 years. We know Nintendo just really values that creative control. Obviously, all of this is so that they can maintain this kind of their voice and being vocal in terms of sharing how they would like the movie to look and feel creatively, how Nintendo IP is being translated. I think that is a really like high priority thing for Nintendo. So it feels like Avi Arad would have that kind of collaborative mentality since he's had to work on other properties where the IP lives elsewhere that's not film. So that could be a reason as well.
I did find an interesting nugget on his Wikipedia page, so it must be true. But it talks about remember how there was this big hack of Sony Pictures and all these emails and things came out.
That's right,
so
yes.
People found out that he had been working to try to secure the rights for a Mario movie. And he had traveled to Japan and met with all these people. And he felt like he was either very close to getting the rights or, some people say like he thought he had the rights.
Ooh.
So this is not a new relationship. And it may be one where there's been, 10 years of persistence of this relationship being built, this trust being built between him and Miyamoto. So I do think that's notable that this is not just, popping up out of nowhere. And again, knowing the relationship with Universal, I think that would be hard to move Nintendo off of that path. So I thought that was an interesting little factoid there.
That is really interesting, and it's so in Nintendo's DNA and their MO to do that, because that is how every relationship within the company is built, is this sort of long-term gaining of trust. And even small little projects that we would work on, it would take like years and years for it to come to fruition, because the team needed to gain trust in you as a partner. And that is the mentality of the company. So I can see that being very true, even more so when they're, letting their IP, go into the hands of someone that's going to translate it to this whole other creative entity. So okay, let's talk about Wes Ball.
Yes, the director. So not a name I was familiar with, to be honest. So I looked him up. Seems relatively fresh on the scene. Did a couple years on this series, The Maze Runner. I'll be honest, I haven't heard of it. Have you?
Really? This is a very good book that I've read. It's a very sort of video game heavy plot. And it's one of those sort of like Hunger Games kind of types of phenomenon. It's kind of a YA, young adult audience. It has sort of that dystopian quality, that sort of trend, like in a Hunger Games or like in a Divergent, like those series have to offer. So that's where I know him from Maze Runner. Pretty new. I think the first Maze Runner movie, it says here, is 2014. So 10 years, I guess, making sense.
And working on the next Planet of the Apes movie, which is coming out in 2024.
Yeah.
Those movies are really critically acclaimed. So I haven't seen all of those. I've seen some of those. They're really well done. So I think for me, that was kind of a proof point of like, all right, this guy's, got some chops. And again, I'm not super familiar with the work, but I'm not, feeling up or down about this. It's like, yeah, this guy seems pretty competent. Obviously, he'll have a lot of help along the way. Like, when the Mario movie came around, like we didn't really hear that much about the directors. It was kind of like an offhanded thing of like, oh yeah, these guys. But
this is different because it's live action. I think. Sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in like deep in the film industry, so I don't want to disparage like directors that work on animated films because that seems very important job as well. But I just imagine more so than ever in a live action movie, you would really need someone that like kind of knows what they're doing, and is quite an important job. The one thing I think this person is good at is sort of translating a fantasy world and bringing it to life for an audience, because that's what that is what he does in Maze Runner, and the Planet of the Apes movie certainly does that. There's a lot of like CG work and all that stuff, to make it feel the environments really come to life, and that is so critically important to bring the world of Hyrule or whatever world we're in the Legend of Zelda to life.
Hyrule.
I don't know. It could be some creative licenses. I don't know.
Oh boy, I'm getting worried.
This is why Nintendo paid more than 50%. But yeah, I would imagine you need somebody that's very experienced in doing that to make a live action movie feel believable and for it to feel right.
So that's the director. Let's move on to the writer. And again, I'm not sure how the internet extrapolated, because again, this person, Derek Connelly, was not mentioned in the press release, but people have found out. So his resume is full of, again, mega hit films, but some of these are not creative or, creatively loved or critically loved. So we have 3 Jurassic Park movies. We have your favorite movies, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker.
That's right.
We have Detective Pikachu,
most notably, as a
that's
video
notable.
game property. Yep.
So I don't know. This may be
a little bit of a hit or miss.
This is maybe a bit of a concern, but again, the writer is taking a lot of direction from other people leading the project. It's not 100% his vision,
right?
So I'm willing to be open with this. Certainly, this person has a lot of experience and a lot of experience writing big movies. So if you want to be glass half full, maybe that's the way to look at it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I'm happy that there is going to be a lot of help, I think, from Nintendo, because that is so critical to get the voice and the tone of everything really right in this. And that's going to be the tough job of the writer to do that, because we all have such deep, all of us who are fans of Zelda have such deep expectations and internal sort of deep knowledge already about the characters. It needs to be this particular way, and he needs to do it. So let's hope he can do it.
So let's talk about the schedule for this. In the tweet, it says, Miyamoto's already been working for several years with Avi Arad, but he says it's going to take time until it's done. Do you have any guesses for when this movie might actually come out?
I think we're pretty early. That's kind of crazy that they announced it so early, because that's so unlike Nintendo with games, right? They always announce the games and it's going to be out in the next 3 months or whatever. They're not the type, unless it's Zelda. I guess maybe this is the Zelda trend where you just announce things super early and then wait for a delay. But I'm going to say minimum 3 years. Maybe maximum 6.
Oh my gosh, 6, wow.
Let's hope not, though, because that's a long time to wait.
I went back and checked, and the Mario movie was about 4 to 5 years, depending on when you consider the official announcement to have happened. There was a delay involved there.
There was the pandemic that happened.
Right. It was an animated movie. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know, does an animated movie take longer to make than a live-action movie? Again, this is not Nintendo's first project now, so maybe they're able to truncate that a little bit. What is it now? 2023, 26, 27, maybe. That's so far off.
Oh, we're gonna be old.
You can't be reading those young adult books anymore after when this movie comes out.
No, I need to read them.
Gosh. So again, that is kind of, some cold water dropped on this of like, oh, I'm excited. This is fun to think about, fun to speculate about. And it's like, well, we're going to be doing that for the next 4 years.
Yeah, hopefully they'll surprise us. Maybe they've been working on it for longer than we think. Let's be very positive.
Who knows?
And maybe they'll surprise us and we'll be like, 3 years we get a movie.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. This point of Sony and Nintendo working together, how did you feel about that?
I thought that was pretty interesting because that is something that, usually you think like, oh, they're like, industry rivals or whatever if you want to do the whole console wars nonsense, which is silly. But yeah, I mean, I think Nintendo at this phase in their like company, life cycle or whatever you want to call it, it's like they really recognize partners that have the talent to create their vision. They recognize Universal to have the talent to create a theme park and an animated film because they have those chops. I think they do recognize Sony as like, a partner that has done thousands of these kinds of projects and knows what they're doing. They're very trusted and very, a very stable partner. So I think that's what's driving that decision. Is like they're really just like, who's the best that we can work with.
Yeah, they are one of the big studios. And from what I understand of Sony, it's a pretty siloed company. And I think that's actually one of the challenges that Sony overall has had over the years is there's maybe not as much communication between the groups as maybe would be best for them. So I think Nintendo got every assurance that it needed that, their information is not being used against them by PlayStation.
Right. Oh, yeah.
There's not going to be a, Zelda the movie, the game on your PlayStation 6 in 5 years. So I wasn't too worried about this.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously we don't know anything about the cast yet, but it is quite inevitable, a next step to start to think about that. We did do last year a video all about if there was hypothetically.
We are so ahead of the trend, you guys. Like we're linking that video below this one. You have to watch it now because it's so relevant. So proud of us.
Yeah, so the idea was if there was a live action Zelda movie, who would be in it?
Yeah.
We had some thoughts.
Mm-hmm. We even wrote like little scenes to act for like the movie potential plot could be.
Right. We thought around this point of, well, Link does not really speak in the games. How could they introduce that? Maybe that's an important... I do think Link is going to talk in this movie. I've seen some people saying, oh no, they're going to continue to keep him
oh my gosh,
as a non-speaking character. It's like, no, I think people should really expect him to speak. Like, these movies are about Nintendo's audience expansion strategy. These are not just fan service for people who buy every Zelda game. This is about introducing Zelda to even more people than they have.
And they saw so much, growth of Nintendo games from the Mario movie. Like Mario games, even in those recent financials, it was like exponentially growing. So they know that the strategy works. And so they're going to make this very accessible for people that are not like deep Zelda fans.
Right. So it's going to have big Hollywood names.
Yes.
Link is going to speak. Mm-hmm. I am absolutely terrified of the day that this all gets revealed. It's going to make the Chris Pratt Mario reveal look like child's play.
Oh, man.
I think the Mario fan base is pretty easygoing. And
they
even
really
then
are.
And even then that reaction was that intense.
Like very intense.
I think the Zelda fan base has much more strong opinions about what this should be. And I'm scared. I'm just scared. No matter who, it could be like the best casting in the world.
I know.
People are going to be mad.
There's going to be some issue.
That's not my Link.
Oh man, this is going to be a real...
Stay off the internet kind of day.
A doozy.
Yeah.
of
Go Apple picking
just
that day.
not only just Link, but every other casting choice is going to
Right.
get the same like heightened emotional response. That is the thing that the Zelda fan base is known for. We are very emotional people. We will cry. We will yell at you. We'll laugh. I mean, it's going to be like a gamut of emotions when all the stuff starts to trickle out. And I worry for us guys. We need to be like emotional support Zelda fans with each other because it's going to be it's going to be tough.
The thing that I'm fascinated about, and again, you should watch our video to see who we picked. I think we have some good picks.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of the movies putting creative pressure on the game teams, where it's like, hey, if you don't want to have Link speak, that's fine, but we're going to do it. And then what is that? And then what does that imply for the games going forward?
Right, and we were wondering about that when Mario Wonder came out after the Mario movie. We're like, what is the next Mario game going to do to the Mario character? Because now the world has heard Chris Pratt's voice, and we've seen Mario in all these situations, and there's all these like characteristics of Mario that we never thought of before, like how he hates mushrooms, apparently. Does that get translated into the game? Mario Wonder is very expressive. I think that was one sort of takeover for whatever they brought over from the movie. That was one thing. But like, what is it going to mean with the Zelda movie and the future of the Zelda games? Like, that's going to be even more impactful.
And knowing, at the pace that they make games, like that could be a 10 years off kind of thing where you finally start to see the implications of that. But it is something that I think is fun to think about.
Yeah.
Another thing that's fun to think about is like, what kind of a story could this be? I think they have 3 options.
Okay.
One is you try to adapt a single existing Zelda story. So it's like, we're going to do Ocarina of Time, or we're going to do Breath of the Wild. And you try to pretty cleanly adapt that single story. The second option is you try and take bits and pieces of all of the Zelda lore and cobble that together into a single story. And then there's the third option where it's like, we're just making something from scratch. Right, I think that's the least likely given all the original material that you have to work with. But the kind of, do we go with the classic Zelda or the new but very popular Zelda?
Right.
Is what fascinates me.
It is really fascinating. And I keep thinking back to the point of like, again, these movies are not fan service. They're about audience expansion. So I would imagine that Nintendo would pick a story or go in the direction of a very introductory Zelda story, which might not be sort of, what the Zelda fans want, because,
like, yeah, we know.
Exactly. And also we've talked to death for like 25 years or 35 years about the Zelda timeline. We've like talked ourselves into like a frenzy at this point. So it's like we may get like a pretty shallow story because they're trying to introduce all these new people to like the world and the lore of Zelda, but it might be stuff that's kind of like boring to us.
Yeah, and I do think they see this as the start of a series. So again, that is a point against the let's pull from everything, because it's like we actually need to preserve our material because we want to make 10 of these things. Who knows if they're really thinking big.
They're really gonna want to have some sort of ongoing movie, presence for Zelda. Maybe it's like a 3 movie, something. Yeah, exactly. It could be really interesting what they do. But I imagine, I really truly believe that this first story is going to be super, super introductory and really kind of just introduce new people to the world of Zelda. This may be, though, our chance to finally figure out the timeline. So
just keep maybe
this is it. Maybe this will be like the definitive, like, we'll figure it out. We're going to figure it out,
Let's
guys.
not.
Well, why do you care?
Let's not.
It could just be presented to you on a beautiful silver platter, and then you'll know. And then people.
We're gonna have a 15-minute Star Wars text scroll to start the movie.
We have to.
And then this happened, but then it branched. And here's what happened on this site. No, let's not do that.
Like, no, we can't do that.
No.
Yeah.
So we got this big announcement. What happens now?
Well, I think that we wait because it's going to be a long time before this thing comes to fruition. So we have to be patient, I think. But I imagine that they will have a really, similar announcement strategy to the Mario movie, where potentially there could be, sort of direct-esque movie updates. There, I could see, all the people that are involved in this project on the, on camera with Mr. Miyamoto to share and talk, in collaboration about this. Hopefully they'll start trickling some of that out when we get a little closer. We got to see these trailers. Trailers 1, 2, 3, 4, however many. There's gonna be some stuff like that, I bet. Or artwork. I think we all flipped out when we saw the Mario movie poster. I imagine like I'm envisioning like this really awesome, movie poster for the Zelda movie. So yeah, I think we can look forward to all of these things like very slowly trickled out. But I think we're not going to hear about this again for like quite some time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a pretty long wait, and I think the next kind of big thing that happened with Mario was hearing about the cast. I'm sure anytime Mr. Miyamoto makes an appearance, or anytime Avi Arad or any of these people make an appearance, they're going to get peppered with questions. So maybe they get some loose lips and let something slip out. That's something Mr. Miyamoto is known to do. But I am settling in for the wait, because I think it could be a long one.
That's right. Yes, that's right. I think we can all just be excited for now that this thing that we've been kind of hoping for, I think all of us have been hoping for this after we, saw the Mario movie, is actually happening. So I think we can be excited for a little bit and imagine what this could be, and yes, be patient, because we don't know when the next update will be. All right.
All right.
What do you think? Are you hyped? Like we are. We're obviously hyped. Let us know in the comments. Let us know all your thoughts and feelings. We will link the video of us talking about like our potential dream casting for the Zelda movie in the description, so you can check that out if you haven't watched it yet. But let us know. We want to hear what you guys think as well. All right. We will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.